Good evening everyone, thank you for the opportunity to speak about why our school should close the separate unit and fully include students like Luca in their local classes. I am speaking from the perspective that inclusion is both a legal obligation and a moral commitment, and, most importantly, the most educationally effective approach for all our learners. Today, I will outline why inclusive education matters in Australia, justify the closure of segregated units, explore the benefits for all stakeholders, and provide evidence-based strategies to support Luca's learning and well-being. Now let's look at why inclusion matters in Australia, and how we got here. Australia has a strong commitment to equitable education, underpinned by both human rights and national policy frameworks. Education is recognised as a fundamental right under Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Disability Discrimination Act 1992, DDA, makes disability discrimination unlawful in schools. Complementing this, the Disability Standards for Education, DSE, 2005, require schools to ensure that students with disability have access to education and can participate, on the same basis, as their peers, including the provision of reasonable adjustments when necessary. Historically, the treatment of students with disability in Australian schools has evolved in stages. Initially, many children were excluded entirely, denied access to education. This was followed by segregation, where students were placed in separate schools or classrooms, often far from peers, leading to limited social interaction and diminished access to the mainstream curriculum. Later, integration models emerged, allowing students to attend the same campus as their peers but without necessarily adapting teaching methods or classroom environments. Today, inclusive education is the goal. Classrooms are designed to adapt to learners' needs, rather than requiring learners to conform to rigid environments. Despite these advances, research indicates that there remains a gap between policy and practice. Gatekeeping, where students are prevented from accessing mainstream classrooms due to assumptions about their abilities, and ableism, where disability is framed as a deficit rather than a natural form of diversity, still limit opportunities. Graham and Colligan, 2016. Colligan, 2016. Inclusive education aims to close this gap by creating learning environments that value diversity, foster equitable access and participation, and recognize that the so-called average learner does not exist. Justification for closing the separate unit. Keeping a separate unit for students like Luca may seem like it provides support, but in reality, it sends a very clear message that some students belong somewhere else. This is what we call othering, and it undermines the very principles of social justice that education in Australia is built on. Social justice can be thought about in three simple ways: recognition, redistribution, and participation. Recognition means valuing every student equally. Segregation, however, signals that students with disability are of lesser status. It reinforces low expectations and suggests they can't fully participate. Redistribution is about how resources are shared. When support is concentrated in separate units, it takes away from mainstream classrooms, instead of building the capacity of all teachers to meet diverse needs. Participation is about belonging and being part of the everyday life of the school. When students are placed in separate units, their opportunities to make friends, work with peers, and develop social and academic skills in real contexts are limited. From a legal and policy point of view, inclusion is not just a good idea, it's an obligation. The Disability Discrimination Act and the Disability Standards for Education require schools to provide access on the same basis as peers. The Melbourne Declaration and the Australian curriculum also make it clear that every child should be able to participate and achieve through reasonable adjustments and differentiated teaching. And importantly, communities themselves want inclusion. Research shows that inclusive schools are not only safer and more welcoming, but they also build stronger social connections and better long-term outcomes for all students, not just those with disability. In fact, segregation is inherently unequal. The alternative, full inclusion in local neighbourhood schools, ensures that every child has access, participation, and a genuine sense of belonging. Implications and benefits for stakeholders, starting with Luca. Let's begin with Luca himself. Luca is a Year 3 student with a mild intellectual impairment and type 1 diabetes. Right now, he's in a separate unit, but moving him into the mainstream classroom brings a range of important benefits. First, access and participation. When Luca learns alongside his peers, he gets the chance to follow the full curriculum and, just as importantly, feel like he truly belongs. Adjustments like structured literacy support and a clear diabetes management plan remove the barriers without removing him from his classroom community. Second, achievement. With the right strategies, Luca can show what he knows without being held back by reading challenges or health interruptions. For example, using structured literacy programs, explicit phonics, comprehension work, and multisensory techniques, he can grow in both confidence and competence. Assistive technology, like text-to-speech or speech-to-text tools, can also give him fair ways to demonstrate his learning. Third, belonging and well-being. Being in class every day with his peers, and especially with his siblings Giorgio and Eliana, builds friendships, strengthens his self-esteem, and helps him develop agency. Differentiation by interest, giving him choices that connect to his strengths, adds to that sense of engagement and ownership. Finally, health management. Inclusion does not mean ignoring Luca's medical needs. With careful planning, his blood glucose checks, insulin routines, and snack times can be built into the school day smoothly and discreetly. This way, he stays safe while still joining in pair, excursions, and classroom activities, all with dignity intact. For parents and caregivers, inclusion reduces the advocacy burden for families. Coordinated planning and clear communication about adjustments, routines, and supports build trust between parents and the school. Parents can have confidence that their child receives both a rigorous education and proper health management in a familiar, socially enriching environment. For teachers and school leaders, inclusion encourages capacity building through the implementation of Universal Design for Learning (UDL) and differentiation strategies, strengthening teaching for all students. Teachers become proficient in proactive planning rather than reactive adjustments, and collaborative practices with teacher aides and allied health staff improve precision of support. Additionally, inclusive practices support compliance with legal and policy requirements, reinforcing a positive and safe school culture. Graham and Colligan, 2016. For peers and the wider school community, peers benefit from exposure to diversity, which cultivates empathy, leadership, and problem-solving skills. Inclusive classrooms normalize differences and reduce stigma, as competence and potential are recognized and nurtured. These experiences develop socially responsible learners who value equity and collaboration. Professional learning and teacher capacity. Inclusion isn't just about Luca, it's also about strengthening our staff's capacity to meet the diverse needs of all learners. For many teachers, the thought of supporting a student with both a mild intellectual impairment and diabetes may feel overwhelming at first. But with the right professional learning and collaborative structures in place, this challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. Professional learning focused on Universal Design for Learning (UDL) and differentiation equips teachers with strategies they can apply across the curriculum. UDL encourages staff to think proactively about multiple means of engagement, representation, and expression. CAST, 2024. Differentiation ensures that tasks are scaffolded and flexible, without lowering expectations. Together, these approaches not only support Luca but also enrich teaching for every student in the classroom. Targeted professional development in diabetes management also plays a critical role. Training in recognizing hypo and hyperglycemia, integrating snack times discreetly, and maintaining safety in peer ensures teachers feel confident, prepared, and supported in their duty of care. Disability Standards for Education, 2005. Importantly, professional growth in this area aligns directly with the AITSL professional standards for teachers, particularly Standard 1.5, Differentiate Teaching for Diverse Abilities, 1.6, Support full participation of students with disability, and 4.1, Establish safe and supportive learning environments. Building expertise in these areas reduces teacher stress, builds collaborative culture, and ultimately leads to stronger learning outcomes for all students, not just those with identified disabilities. Florian and Black Hawkins, 2011, Graham and Colligan, 2016. When teachers feel empowered with the knowledge and strategies to support diversity, inclusion shifts from being a burden to being an asset. In this way, capacity building is not an optional extra, it is a cornerstone of creating a truly inclusive and future-focused school. Understanding Luca's profile and differentiation strategies. To support Luca well, we need to understand both his learning profile and his health needs. Luca has a mild intellectual impairment, which impacts his memory, processing, and understanding of complex concepts. On top of that, his type 1 diabetes requires careful management, regular blood glucose checks, insulin, and meal planning. Inclusive practice means we can't treat these as separate issues. We need an approach that integrates both learning and health. Let's start with environmental and access adjustments. The classroom should be set up so Luca has safe and easy movement, including step-free routes and flexibility in seating. Health supports are also vital. Snack times and insulin routines need to be discreet and normalized, with staff trained in diabetes care and clear emergency protocols. And because energy levels can fluctuate, scheduled breaks and flexible transitions help prevent fatigue and keep Luca engaged. Now, onto instructional and assessment adjustments. Tasks should be scaffolded and instructions simplified into smaller chunks, supported with visuals and graphic organizers. Literacy can be strengthened with structured approaches, phonics, oral rehearsal, decodable texts, and short focused sessions to improve retention. Assessments should also be flexible. Luca might demonstrate his knowledge through oral presentations, diagrams, or digital submissions, with extra time provided where needed. Assistive technology, like text-to-speech, audiobooks, and speech-to-text tools, makes a big difference in ensuring he can participate equitably. The UDL framework and the Maker model provide clear structures for this. In terms of engagement, Luca should have multiple ways to participate, with roles and tasks that align with his strengths, and choices of topics that interest him. For representation, content should be available in text, audio, and visual formats, supported with scaffolds like graphic organizers. And for action and expression, Luca should be able to show his learning in different ways: oral, visual, written, or digital, with rubrics that ensure fairness. The Maker model also helps us plan by adjusting the content, process, product, and environment. For example, modifying the complexity of content, scaffolding the process, offering different options for products, and creating spaces for quiet time or movement breaks. Finally, collaboration with the teacher aide is essential. Sharing lesson goals, assigning targeted roles, like supporting Luca at literacy stations or monitoring his engagement, and having quick daily check-ins ensures that adjustments are responsive to Luca's needs as they evolve. Inclusive education benefits from understanding both social and medical perspectives. The social model of disability recognizes that barriers in the environment, curriculum, and attitudes limit participation, rather than the impairment itself. By contrast, the medical model focuses on the individual's limitations. Our approach to Luca blends both. We accommodate medical needs for diabetes management, while ensuring learning environments are accessible and engaging, thus minimizing the disabling impact of both his intellectual impairment and his medical condition. Graham and Colligan, 2016. CAST UDL Guidelines, 2024. Long-term outcomes of inclusive education. When we think about Luca's future, it's clear that the benefits of inclusion extend well beyond the classroom. Research consistently shows that students with disability who are educated in inclusive settings develop stronger independence, higher self-esteem, and more robust social networks compared to those who are segregated. Colligan, 2016. Foreman and Arthur Kelly, 2017. These outcomes have lasting effects. Young people who experience genuine inclusion at school are more likely to transition successfully into further study, employment, and active participation in their communities. By contrast, segregated schooling often reinforces low expectations and dependence. When students are separated from peers, their opportunities for learning everyday social, emotional, and problem-solving skills are reduced. This can limit their post-school options and contribute to social isolation in adulthood. For Luca, remaining in a separate unit risks sending the message that he cannot belong in mainstream spaces, when in reality, with the right supports, he can thrive. Inclusive education also strengthens families and communities. For Luca, sharing school life with his siblings, Giorgio and Eliana, not only promotes a sense of fairness but creates shared memories and relationships that extend beyond school. Families benefit when children can attend the same classes and activities, without having to navigate the stigma or logistical challenges of separate programs. Ultimately, inclusion sets students like Luca up with the skills and confidence they need for lifelong participation. By investing in inclusive practices now, we're not just supporting Luca in Year 3, we're giving him the tools to contribute meaningfully to society as an adult, on the same basis as his peers. Closing the separate unit is not a loss, it is a strategic investment in better teaching for all. It aligns with Australia's legal obligations, honours human rights and social justice principles, and, most importantly, allows Luca and every child to belong, participate, and achieve on the same basis as their peers. By applying differentiated instruction, UDL, the Maker model, and proactive health management strategies, the school can ensure that inclusion is not only possible, but pedagogically and socially enriching. With courage, skill, and care, we can create a school community where every child, including Luca, is seen, valued, and given the opportunity to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. Let us lead by example, modeling the inclusive, equitable, and compassionate education that Australia's students deserve. Thank you.